What is going on, my friends? It's great to see you guys. My name is Ryan Williams, and it is the beginning of a new month, which you know what that means. That's right, it's time for another dividend portfolio update. In this video, we'll be running through my dividend stock portfolio, and I'll be breaking down for you guys which stocks I bought last month, some of my plans for this upcoming month. We'll talk about dividend income, and knowing me, I'll probably ramble on about some other stuff just a little bit, not too much. Anyway, before we get rocking and rolling, if you guys are pumped to spend some time on some dividends today, go ahead and give this video a big thumbs up. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate it. And now, without further ado, let's get into it. All right, guys, so I think the best place to start is just going to be to go over my recent buys. And before we get into that, what we're looking at here is my dividend portfolio tracker on Google Sheets that I made. If you guys want to check that out, there's a link to it in the description of this video. You can get it totally free. But I used this spreadsheet to track all of my purchases, track a lot of the stats as it pertains to my dividend portfolio. And I found it really helpful for me to keep track of what's going on with my dividend stocks. And for those of you who've been watching my videos for some time now, you might see that this portfolio looks a little bit different. I added this little bad boy down here. And I also added a couple columns throughout, which I will cover in a future video. I'm trying to make some updates to this portfolio, and I will be making a video on that, just trying to make it better for you guys and for myself. But I have a few more tweaks I want to make, so I'm not gonna go into it quite yet. But while we're on the topic of this, I've been getting a lot of questions about this portfolio tracker. Can I add this? How do you do this? I'm seeing your questions. I'm trying to answer them in the comments or email whenever they come. But I promise you guys, probably sometime this month, pretty soon, I will be putting out another update video on this portfolio tracker. All right, so anyway, enough rambling on that. I told you guys I was just gonna ramble throughout a little bit on some stuff. But moving on, let's finally get into some of my recent buys in the month of May. So if you guys saw my last portfolio update video from April, I had recently added this stock right here into my portfolio, American States Water Company, ticker symbol AWR. And this is a utility company I picked up and wanted to start building a position in. And for the last 9 weeks, I've bought one share every single week. And you know, it's about $78, almost $79 per share. So with my $125 that I invest every single week, I'm able to pick up one share of this and, you know, put some money into some other stocks. So in the month of May, I was continuing the trend of buying AWR every single week. And some of the other stocks, I mean, with the, you know, extra funds that were left over after the purchase of one of these shares, I bought into some various stocks. Like I think I bought a share of EPD. I think I put a little bit into J&J. I picked up almost one whole share of Coca-Cola. Throughout the month of May, I also picked up, I think like 3 or maybe 4 shares of ORCC. And I'm actually pretty bad about this. I really don't need to be buying any more into this stock. I probably already have more than I should, but this stock is such an easy stock to buy. It's a great dividend yielding stock. If we look over here, it's currently yielding 8.5%, which is insane. And as you guys can see, it's super cheap to buy. It's less than $15 per share. So it makes it easy to pick up like 1 or 2 shares after I buy a share of AWR. So, you know, throughout the last few weeks, I maybe bought one here, bought one there. But I'm trying not to do that. I'm trying to, you know, spread that money into some other stocks as well. So I also picked up a little bit of Procter & Gamble, maybe like a fraction of a share, like 0.2, maybe 0.3 shares of Starbucks, really not that much. And I also, in the month of May, I picked up a couple shares of AT&T. But anyway, guys, the month of May was really not a super eventful month for me. You know, I pretty much just bought AWR and then, you know, fractions of shares here and there. But I'm really not selling any shares or selling out of any companies these days. I'm pretty happy with where my portfolio is currently at. I feel like I have a decent amount of diversification. I feel like I have a good balance of stocks where some are good dividend growth stocks, meaning the dividends grow pretty well year over year. I feel like I have some that currently have a high dividend yield. I mentioned a couple already, like ORCC. EPD is another really high yielding dividend stock. And I also have some that have done pretty well as far as capital appreciation goes. Like Starbucks has been killing it for me. I'm up 16.5% there. 3M, I'm up almost 23%. Altria Group, ticker symbol MO, same thing, up 20%. So I'm pretty happy with where I'm at in my portfolio. It's just kind of making small tweaks here and there. And I would imagine that this trend will continue until something dramatic happens with any of the stocks I own. The closest thing that could have happened was with AT&T. I know a lot of people have probably sold out of AT&T at this point, but I've mentioned this in one of my recent videos, guys. I'm holding strong, and in fact, I'm buying more. All right, now moving on, guys, I want to talk about my annual dividend income just a little bit. So if you guys saw my last video where I talked about 2 huge dividend income records that I just reached, you'll remember that in the month of May, I had about $127 in dividend income just in that month, which is a new record. It's the first time, well, number one, it's the most amount of income that I've gotten in a month from dividends, and number 2, it's the first time that I've gotten dividend income over $100 in a 1 month span. And honestly, guys, the bulk of my income, my dividend income last month came from just 3 stocks. Like EPD paid me a good chunk, ORCC also paid me pretty decently, believe it or not, and AT&T did me well, as it always does. And just between those 3 stocks, I think that made up like 70 or 80 bucks of my dividend income for the month of May. But really, guys, the main point, the main thing that I want to touch on as it pertains to my annual dividend income is the last time I did one of these update videos, which was at the beginning of May, so for the month of April, I checked it out. My annual dividend income was like $1,054, I think was the number. And as you can see down here, my annual dividend income right now, as it currently stands, is about $35 higher than that. So basically in a 1 month period of time, my dividend income jumped up like 35 bucks, which I think is really cool, but I really can't give the credit for that to my investing expertise, just to be honest with you guys. One thing I did is I went through in the month of May and updated the annual dividend payments for all the stocks in my portfolio, and I have to do that manually. There's no way to put in a formula to do that on this spreadsheet. So every couple of months I go in and update this information, or as I see it, I'll update it. And that gave me a little bit of boost. I had a few stocks in my portfolio that had raised their annual dividends. And so that helped me get my income up just a little bit. But still a $30 jump or $35 jump in a 1 month span is pretty good. And just looking into the future, guys, I would imagine that within the next month, or maybe within the next 2 months, I think between 1 and 2 months, my annual dividend income will reach $1,100 per year, which is awesome. I don't remember how recent this was, but I remember it was not too long ago that my annual dividend income had hit $1,000, and it took a long time to get there. And it seemed like the jump from $1,000 to $1,100 went by maybe in the span of like 3 months, maybe 4 months. I don't remember off the top of my head, but to me, it was not a very long period of time. And the reason I mentioned that, the point I'm trying to make is, the snowball effect is starting to take place. I'm starting to see it. It's starting to grow a little bit exponentially. So, I'm getting pumped. I don't think it'll be much longer before I'm at $1,500 and then $2,000 in annual dividend income, and so on and so forth. And every week when I invest into this portfolio and see the annual dividend income go up, it's just one step closer to reaching that goal of financial freedom. And I got to tell you guys, it feels good. All right, guys, enough on that. And I'm sorry again if I've been rambling. Let's jump over to this diversification page real quick and talk about what's going on here and talk about some future plans. Let's start by looking at actual allocations versus target allocations. So as I mentioned before, my goal is to build up my AWR position to bring this utilities up to where I want it to be. So I only have about 0.3%, 0.4% till I'm there, which means I probably really only have to buy AWR for the next week or maybe the next 2 weeks. I'll probably only buy 1 or 2 more shares before I switch to something else. And what that something else will be, guys, I think I'm going to add another stock to my portfolio in the healthcare sector. I've been talking a lot about AbbVie lately. I made a video on, actually a few videos that referenced AbbVie pretty heavily, and in those videos I said that is a stock I'll may be adding to my portfolio soon, and I think that's going to be my next move, is to add AbbVie to my portfolio and get up to that 10% healthcare target in my portfolio here. And so I think that's what I'm going to do is once I buy 1 or 2 more shares of AWR, switch over to building a position in AbbVie, and I'll probably from there, I only need about 2.85%. So, spend the next 5-6 weeks buying AbbVie, and that was a little bit more expensive to buy than AWR. So that might take up a good chunk of my weekly contributions, if that makes sense. But other than that, guys, if I do have funds left over, I could buy a little more communications to bring that up to where the target is. Same thing with consumer discretionary. I could bring that up. I could buy a little more Starbucks and bring that up to 7%. But other than that, everything's looking pretty good. Real estate's still, I'm still pretty well over the target allocation, so I'm going to hold off on buying Realty Income or WP Carry, which are the two REITs in my portfolio, for a little bit until this gets down to, you know, where it needs to be. And same thing here with industrials. The only industrial stock I have is 3M, so I'm going to hold off on that. I really should hold off on buying ORCC, and I will hold off on buying Main Street Capital Corporation, which are the two financial stocks in my portfolio. And it's tough not to buy those stocks, especially ORCC, because like I said, it's such a high yielder and it's so cheap, so it's a really tempting buy. And scrolling up just a little bit, guys, I want to analyze these charts here just for a moment. More so this diversification in stock one. So as I mentioned earlier, I feel like my portfolio is pretty well diversified. I'm pretty happy with where everything is. And just from looking at it, you can tell it looks like a pretty balanced piece of pie. I mean, if this was a pizza, this is definitely the piece that I would reach for first. But more or less, things are starting to look fairly even. I mean, there's some outliers here. AWR is still, you know, a relatively small chunk of my portfolio, less than 3%. ORCC, same thing, only 3.3%. But other than that, everything is more or less looking fairly balanced. I mean, it kind of just from at a glance, it looks like everything's kind of sitting between like 4.5% to maybe, you know, 6% on the high end, and there's a couple outliers on the high end too, like Campbell Soup is 8.2%, Realty Income's 10% of my portfolio, which is a lot. Like I said, I'm not gonna buy into this for a while. I'm just gonna let the dividends do their thing. 3M is a big chunk of my portfolio right now, 8.3%, Johnson & Johnson, 7%. But otherwise, everything's starting to look pretty balanced, and I'm happy with how this chart is looking here. And while we're on this subject here, I would love your guys' input on this. Leave me a comment below, but how do you guys diversify your stock portfolios? Does it look kind of like this, where every stock is, you know, kind of similar in size or an allocation? Or are you way heavily weighted in some, really not heavily weighted in others? How do you kind of approach this? But leave me a comment below. I would love to hear from you guys on this. All right, guys, so the last thing I kind of want to talk about is my portfolio's performance in the month of May. So we are looking at Seeking Alpha right now. I just recently linked my dividend portfolio to Seeking Alpha, so I'm able to see all my holdings and stuff in here and see how everything has been performing. It's similar to what we'd see on the portfolio summary page here, but you know, just a kind of a different layout. I don't know, I just wanted to try it out. There's really maybe not much benefit to having it linked here, but like I said, I'm just kind of testing things out. So what I really want to do, let's go over to this performance tab right here and categorize it by month. Let's see what the top performing stocks in my portfolio were in the last month. And it looks like, just from looking at it here, EPD in the last month gained 5.5%. Great, awesome. Altria Group was another banger in the last month, up 4%. And Coca-Cola, surprisingly, in the last month had a gain of almost 4%. I feel like for me, that one's been pretty stagnant, sitting between, for me at least, like $50 and maybe $52 per share. So it's good to see that start getting some appreciation. And now let's look at the biggest losers in the last month here. I mean, it's no surprise to me that AT&T is well, first of all, I didn't know it was down 8.5% in the last month, but it's no surprise to me that AT&T is the biggest loser. So I'm sure at this point you guys are all familiar with the news surrounding AT&T, the recent news. In case you're not, to make a long story very short, they are going to be spinning off Warner Media with Discovery to create a new media company that's supposed to rival Netflix and Hulu and Disney+. So AT&T will no longer own Warner Media, and that news made the stock just straight down. But I know I've said this before in other videos, guys. I am holding strong. I'm holding on to AT&T. I actually think it's going to make them a more reliable company, and I think a lot of the qualms that people have with this company will be mitigated or will kind of be eliminated by this transaction. Okay, the next biggest loser was Southern Company, down 3% in the last month. That's not too bad. And in third place, Verizon, down 2.2%, which is really not too bad. Overall, my portfolio was up in the last month. And real quick, I'll put a screenshot up right now from my Charles Schwab app that shows exactly how my portfolio performed over the last month. I think it might be helpful to look at it this way, so check that out. Pretty decent gain. for the month of May, not too bad. All right, my friends, well, that pretty much wraps it up for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoy seeing these dividend portfolio updates. I got to keep you in the loop whenever I make these moves. And as I mentioned earlier, it's not been too eventful for my portfolio. I've just been buying like one share here and there. Nothing super crazy, so I don't feel like I need to update you guys more than once a month. I think that's a pretty decent amount. But at any rate, I enjoy making these videos. It's really fun to talk about what's been going on and what I plan to do in the future, and I hope you guys find some value in it. So if you stuck around this far, thank you so much for watching through to the end. I really appreciate it. And if you are still here with me and have not done so already, please don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up. It would mean a lot, and it would tremendously help out the performance of these videos on YouTube when you go and hit that like button. So please don't forget to do that before you click off to the next one. And if you're interested in seeing more content from me, mosey on over to that subscribe button right there. It's right next to the like button, and just click it so you can stay up to date on all future videos. All right, guys, well, with that said, I will now get out of your hair. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you in the next one.